Hi, welcome to Empty Nest Creations. My name is Wendy. I'm the owner and creator here. Thank you for joining me for this video. This video is going to be a little bit different. In this video, I'm just going to be doing one project. And the reason I'm doing one project is this project has several different steps, and they're a little bit detailed and a little bit different. And so I wanted to give myself and you time to see what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. I'm going to be using some paint inlays today and some transfers. And I'm going to be using them on drop cloth fabric. And so this is a little bit different. This idea is not unique to me. I've seen other creators doing things with drop cloth, but I really like the idea of the paint inlay on the fabric, and it was a lot of fun to work on, and it turned out really, really well. So this is something that you might want to use in the future, and so we're going to jump right into this video and show you what I did with drop cloth and some IOD products. So to start this project off, I just tore off a piece of drop cloth fabric. You can get drop cloth at any hardware store. I usually get mine at Harbor Freight. I like the thickness of this one. And so they're really large. You can get a lot of projects out of these. I've actually had this drop cloth for a couple of years now. So we're going to start off with DIY's Liquid Patina, and I'm going to add just a really good coat of this all over this piece of drop cloth. Now, when I'm using the drop cloth, I don't generally cut it with scissors. I make a snip and just rip it. That doesn't really matter on this project, but if you wanted smooth edges, of course, cut it with scissors. Usually when I'm using drop cloth, I want those rough edges. And I will have some rough edges on some of this project, but it wasn't absolutely necessary. So this DIY Liquid Patina is going on. I did put a little plastic bag under the fabric to keep the Liquid Patina from sticking to the tablecloth or the mat that I have under this project. So I just put that little bag there. Bonus, if you wanted your drop cloth to look kind of like a feed sack or something like that, pick out bags that have wording on it that you like. These plastic bags, it's just kind of painted on, and when I added the Liquid Patina on here, on the back side, it transferred all of that ink from the bag to the fabric. I imagine, and I haven't tried this, but I imagine you could lay down your Liquid Patina and then put your bag on the top. But it worked just fine doing it on the back as well. So I'm covering this really well. This is going to provide kind of a moisture barrier when it's dry to keep the paint from going all the way through to the other side. And again, for this project, maybe not super important. But each of these layers is just going to add some stability to the fabric. So once I get that on really well, I'm going to let it dry completely. And I let it dry overnight. Then I'm going to come in and add a layer of chalk paint. And I'm just using Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. You see I sprayed the fabric with some water. That's just going to help that paint to glide over the surface. And so I'm going on with a really good coat of this chalk paint, covering everywhere that I had the Liquid Patina. Now you saw earlier I did use some painter's tape in the corners to kind of hold this fabric down. It was moving around quite a bit. So I just stuck some tape on the back. I made sure not to get it on those frayed edges so it wouldn't pull any strings out. But that just helps to hold it in place while I'm working. So once I have that layer of paint on, I'm using an IOD paint inlay. This is from the Ditsy Blooms paint inlay package. And you want to make sure that you wet it really well. There were some sections that I didn't get enough water on, so that's what I'm doing, kind of folding it back and adding water to the paint inlay. You want to mist the paint side of the paint inlay and then lay it down in your wet paint. Now I'm just kind of rubbing it in using just a paper towel to rub it in and make sure that that paint inlay is adhering to the wet paint underneath. Now again, once that's done, I'm going to let this completely dry. I did not use a heat tool for this. I let it dry for several hours. And then I'm going to come back and we're going to mist that paper again. You want to mist the entire inlay. And then I just go in and kind of rub off any of that excess water. You don't want the water to drip off onto your project as you pull the inlay up because it can smear the paint. And then after about 30 seconds, you can just peel it back. This is always like magic to me. I used to be really afraid of paint inlays, but the more I use them, the more I love them. Now this gives us a really rustic finish. This fabric is kind of a rough texture. It's woven, so it's not an even texture. So you can see that it's not a perfect transfer, but it looks amazing. So you do have to seal your paint inlays. Now you can do this in multiple ways. You can use a brush. You can use a sponge dauber. Just, kind of sponge it on. You don't want to go back and forth like I'm doing right here, and you see why. When you go back and forth, the moisture from the top coat will reactivate that paint and make it smear. So I did get some smears, so don't do that. Now I'm just kind of brushing over it once and leaving it. The liquid patina is going on kind of heavy in some places and thinner in others. It's okay. It soaks in, it evens out, it's fine. If you don't want to use a brush to put your top coat on, you can take this out and use a spray sealer to spray over it. But once I do this, I'm going to, again, let it completely dry before we move on to the next step. So the rest of this, I didn't get any smears, just in that one section where I forgot and went back and forth over it. But it turned out just fine. So if you like these kind of videos, please consider subscribing to my channel. It really helps my channel to grow. So here I just used a piece of wood that I had cut out into a triangle shape to draw a triangle shape onto our fabric. And then I'm going to use that one to just draw some others out. You could do this a lot of different ways. You could use a paper pattern. I don't know that you could pin through this because now it's kind of stiff and thick. But the marker works fine. I just go back later and trim off anywhere that I had the marker, where you could see the marker. You could use, I just didn't have one, you could use a fabric marker, the kind that when you wet it, it disappears. So you could use that as well. But like I said, I just use a Sharpie and I go back in and I just trim off any black lines that are showing. And right here, you'll see me cut out 4 of these. I do go back and do a whole another piece of drop cloth fabric in this same design, because ultimately I wanted 4 trees. And so for each tree, you'll need 2 of these pieces of fabric. And I do have leftovers of this, the little scraps you'll see. I just have a little bit of a scrap of this one, and I had a little bit of a scrap of the other one. I will be using this for other projects, so I did not discard the leftovers. I will use them. They would make great gift tags for the holidays. So here I'm just going back in and kind of trimming off anywhere you could see that Sharpie marker. Now I have some spindles. These came from the back of a chair, and I just cut them down. I had 2 spindles, and I cut them into uneven sizes. So I'll have a tall tree and a shorter tree for each design. So now I'm just matching these up, and I'll trim them a little bit, but I do want them to have a little excess fabric. So you'll see once I start gluing that I kind of, if they're not the same size, I just glue the edges together, and that gives me a little excess in the center. You see here I'm kind of pulling it to make those edges meet, because we are going to stuff these. So I'm going to do the same thing for the other one, and like it's just trimming them up to make sure they match. Now I don't use a lot of hot glue on my projects, because especially Christmas decorations, you're going to store these for the year somewhere, and if hot glue gets hot, it tends to come apart. So but fabric, it holds okay, so I was okay using it on these. But you could use some other types of glue. You could use fabric glue here. You could use Eileen's tacky glue would work. It just takes a little longer for those to dry. So once I have those all glued together, I'm going to use the IOD transfer Santa's Hollow. And I just went through and found some images that I wanted to put on these trees. And I just picked out some holly and berries. And I picked out some that were similar so I could have kind of matching sets. Now you can use these transfers on fabric. It doesn't have to be painted. You can just have regular old, just plain fabric, and you can transfer on them. On these, because there's so much texture on here now, I did have to rub pretty hard. You'll see me really pressing down on these transfers, but they transfer on, and I didn't have any trouble. It just took a little more work to get them on there, but they do transfer on really well. So with transfers, you just lay them down where you want them. Take that transfer tool that comes with the transfers, and you just rub over it, lifting that top sheet as you go. If any of the transfer doesn't adhere to your project, just lay that plastic sheet back down and rub over it some more. And there you go. Now you do want to go back in and burnish it. I just, rubbed over it with my fingers to make sure it adheres well. And so this is the matching one for this one. And again, I sped this up a little bit, but they go on pretty easy. Putting that top coat on really helps those transfers to adhere. And here's the other 2 that I made. So you see some of them have that raw edge on the bottom. So when I cut my trees out, I made sure that the ones that have a raw edge, I matched those up front and back. The ones that didn't, I matched those together so that they look the same on the front and the back. And I am putting the transfer on the opposite side of the tree for the matching one. So I'll put one on the right side and one on the left side. And now those are complete. They turned out so cute with the transfers. So now I'm going to go in, I'm just using a paintbrush here to help me get into the very tip of this. Now I am using a polyfill stuffing, but I just bought a pillow from Walmart, one of the cheap pillows. It's like $4 or $5. And I just pull the stuffing out of that. It's a little bit cheaper than buying the bags of polyfill, and you get about the same amount, and it works really well. And so I'm just kind of pushing that. I want that tip to kind of, be really stuffed. And then I'm just going to fill it up, and I'm going to fill all of them up, and then we'll move on to the next step. And you see, as I'm opening this up and poking that paintbrush in there, I'm finding places where the glue didn't hold, or I didn't get enough glue there. And so I'm just going in with my hot glue gun and filling that in. And then I'll go in with that stuffing and fill it in. And again, I apologize for being out of the camera angle so much. I'm trying to get better at that. There's another spot where it popped open, so I'm just gluing it back down. I've seen lots of these trees made like this with the fabric and stuffed and put on a stand. And I thought this, using the paint inlay fabric, was a neat twist on that idea. So here I've just got some little wood slices that I picked up at the craft store, and I'm going to use a combination of wood glue and some nails to hold these on. I will be selling these, and so I want to make sure that they stay together. And wood glue usually holds really, really well, but I just wanted that extra security of the nails, so I'm using my IOD nail gun to nail these together. So once I had them all glued, I'm just going to turn them upside down and shoot a couple of nails right there in the center to hold that piece in. I love this nail gun. I had one that worked with the air compressor, but this battery operated one is so much easier to use. So now that I have all the bases done, it's time to just kind of finish these up. So I'm going to use a little hot glue, and I'm going to seal one edge, and then I'm just going to add some hot glue to the center and glue it to that middle post, and then seal it shut. They turned out pretty cute. I got 2 more to do. And now that they're all glued, we can move on to finishing them up. So I just have some velvet ribbon here that I picked up at Hobby Lobby. And I'm just going to tie these on right at the base of the tree. And then here I'm using a little piece to make a little bow. So I'm just kind of folding it into a bow shape. And then I'm just using a little hot glue here to hold it together so that I can tie it in the middle. Now this is just some baker's twine, and I have these little tiny jingle bells that I picked up at a thrift store a while back. So I tied those to the end of this string, and then I'm just going to tie this around the middle of that bow and then tie it into a bow. I'm doing it this way because I didn't have a whole lot of this red ribbon left. And so I didn't have enough to tie a bow onto both of these. But I think it turned out really cute. So I'm just going to cinch that in the middle and tie it a couple of times to make sure it holds. It's a little challenging with those jingle bells on the end. And I'm going to flip it to the front. I'll tie that again, and then I'll just do the rabbit ears way of tying it into a little bow in the middle. This is how I taught my kids to tie their shoes, with the rabbit ears. So once I have that bow done, I'm just going to glue it to the middle where I tied that ribbon on there. And then those two they're not quite done. I'm going to add something else to them, but I thought they were done at that point. So the green one, I'm tying it a little different. And I was going to use the baker's twine on both of them, but the green baker's twine did not match this velvet ribbon. So I decided to do something different with this one. So I have these little holly leaves and berries. I'm not sure where I got them. I've had them for several years. But I'm going to use these to add a little decoration to those ribbons that are on these trees. So these are like wrapped together with some florist tape. And I'm just going to kind of spread them out, decide how I want them placed. And that little wire edge is a little too long. It was sticking out under the ribbon. So I'm going to trim it off. I'll do that in just a second here. But I had a couple of different colors of green on this project. And that's okay. They don't have to be all matching. So I just tucked that little bottom piece under the ribbon and then just used a little hot glue to hold it on. So I'm going to do the same thing to the other one. And then I looked at those red ones and thought, let me use the holly berries on those too. So I thought they were done, but I decided to put some holly on those as well. Now with this one, I had the other ones facing up onto the tree, and these I turned down so that they're coming kind of over that center of that bow. I wasn't real happy with the way the bow looked. So that kind of covers up that center of that bow. And these are complete. These were so much fun to make. I wasn't completely sure what I was doing or what my complete plan was when I started. I just started out to see if I could get the paint inlay on this fabric, and it turned out awesome. I really, really like the way it turned out. So leave me a comment below and let me know what you think about this project. And let me know if you like this longer, extended version of a project. Thank you so much for watching and joining me today. And I'll see you guys in the next video.